read on the channel. We're reading another day of week 3, Tuesday's read of Think and Grow Rich. This is week 3, chat. And we're reading from this chapter today. There we go. All right. Now, in chapter 3, faith, visualizing and believing in the attainment of desire, the second step to riches. Now, chat, this is a long chapter. Before we even get started, this is a long chapter. It's about 36 pages. So, if you you can show up, you can leave and come back for the end, but it's going to be about 45 minutes. It's going to be about 45 minutes to do this read aloud of these 36 pages. So, we read yesterday, and we realized how long this chapter was. But before we keep going there, so what we do here with this Think and Grow Rich read, we do this read every week, Monday through Friday, Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday, we do application practices, or if they have any things in the book that they want us to do, then we do those on Thursday and Friday, right? So Monday through Wednesday, we're going to read the chapter, right? So there'll be 3 reads of the chapter. And then Thursday and Friday, we're going to do the activities that are in the chapter, or we'll create our own activity for Thursday and Friday for the chapter, right? And this chapter is chapter 3, faith, visualizing, and believing. It's quite a long chapter, chat. So if you want to, grab your popcorn, grab notebooks, or whatever you want to do while you sit and listen, by all means, go ahead and do that now. But without further ado, the second step to riches, faith. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration, translate it into a spiritual equivalent, and transmit it into the infinite intelligence. As in the case of prayer, faith, love, and sex are the most powerful of all the major positive emotions. When the 3 are blended, they have the effect of coloring the vibration of thought in such a way that instantly reaches the subconscious mind. Word is changed. What's up, Aiden? How you doing? Into a spiritual equivalent. The only form that induces a response from the infinite intelligence. Love and faith are psychic, related to our spiritual side. Sex is purely biological and is only related to the physical being. I'm doing pretty good, bro. How's your Tuesday going so far? The mixing up or blending of these 3 emotions has the effect of opening a direct line of communication between the finite thinking mind and infinite intelligence. Faith is a state of mind that may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. As an illustration, consider the purpose for which you are presumably reading this book. The object is, naturally, to acquire the ability to transmute the intangible thought, impulse, or desire into its physical counterpart, money. What's up, Candor VR? How you doing, man? By following the instructions laid down in Chapter 3 on autosuggestion and Chapter 11 on the subconscious mind, you may convince the subconscious mind that you believe you will receive what you ask for. It will act upon that belief, passing back to you in the form of faith, followed by a definite plan for procuring your goal. The method by which one develops faith, where it does not already exist, is extremely difficult to describe. Almost as difficult, in fact, as it would be to describe the color of red to a blind man. Faith is a state of mind that you may develop at will, after you have mastered the 13 steps to riches in this book. Making repeated affirmations to your subconscious mind is the only known method of developing the emotion of faith voluntarily. Perhaps the meaning may be made clearer through the following explanation as to the way people sometimes become criminals. Stated in the words of a famous criminologist, when people first come into contact with crime, they abhor it. If they remain in contact with crime for a time, they become accustomed to it and endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they finally embrace it and become influenced by it. This is the equivalent of saying that any impulse of thought, which is repeatedly passed on to the subconscious mind, is finally accepted and acted upon. The subconscious mind proceeds to translate that impulse into its physical equivalent by the most practical procedure available. In connection with this, consider again the statement, all thoughts which have been emotionalized, given feeling, and mixed with faith begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. The emotions or the feeling portion of thoughts are the factors that give thoughts vitality, life, and action. The emotions of faith, love, and sex, when mixed with any thought impulse, give it greater action than any of these emotions can do singly. Not only thought impulses which have been mixed with faith, but also those that have been mixed with any of the positive emotions or any of the negative emotions may reach and influence the subconscious mind. From this statement, you will understand that the subconscious mind will translate a thought impulse of a negative or destructive nature into its equivalent physical equivalent just as readily as it will act upon a thought or impulses of a positive or constructive nature. The accounts for the strange phenomenon so many millions of people experience refer to as misfortune or bad luck. Millions of people believe themselves doomed to poverty and failure because of some strange force over which they believe they have no control. They are the creators of their own misfortunes because of this negative belief, which is picked up by the subconscious mind and translated into its physical equivalent. This is an appropriate place at which to suggest again that you may benefit by passing on to your subconscious mind any desire that you wish translated into its physical or monetary equivalent, in a state of expectancy or belief that the transmutation will actually take place. Your belief or faith is the element that determines the action of your subconscious mind. There is nothing to hinder you from deceiving your subconscious mind when giving it instructions through autosuggestion, as I deceived my son's subconscious mind. To make this deceit more realistic, conduce yourself just as you would if you were already in possession of the material thing which you are demanding. When you call upon your subconscious mind, the subconscious mind will transmute into its physical equivalent by the most direct and practical media available, and the order given to it in a state of belief or faith that the order will be carried out. Surely enough, has been stated to give a starting point from which one may, through experiment and practice, acquire the ability to mix faith with any order given to the subconscious mind. Perfection will come through practice. It cannot come by merely reading instructions. If it is true that one may become a criminal by association with crime, and this is a known fact, it is equally true that one may develop faith by voluntary suggestion to the subconscious mind that one has faith. The mind comes, finally, to take on the nature of the influences that dominate it. Understand this truth, and you will know why it is essential for you to encourage the positive emotions as dominating forces of your mind, and discourage and eliminate negative emotions. A mind dominated by positive emotions becomes favorable abode for the state of mind known as faith. A mind so dominated may, at will, give the subconscious mind instructions which it will accept and act upon immediately. And now this part is called faith is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. All through the ages, religious leaders have admonished struggling humanity to have faith in this, that, and other dogma or creed, but they have failed to tell people how to have faith. They have not said that faith is a state of mind and that it may be induced by self-suggestion. In language any normal human can understand, we will describe all that is known about the principle with which faith may be developed, where it does not already exist. Have faith in yourself, faith in the infinite. Before we begin, you should be reminded again that faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulses of thought. The foregoing sentence is worth reading a second time, and a third time, and a fourth. It is worth reading aloud. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all the miracles and mysteries that cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote to failure. Faith is the element, the chemical, which, when mixed with prayer, gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence. Faith is the element that transforms the ordinary vibration of thought, created by the finite man of mind, into the spiritual equivalent. Faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used. Every one of the foregoing statements is capable of proof. The proof is simple and easily demonstrated. It is wrapped up in the principle of autosuggestion. Now let us center our attention, therefore, upon the subject of self-suggestion and find out what it is capable of achieving. It is a well-known fact that one comes finally to believe whatever one repeats to oneself, whether the statement be true or false. If a person repeats a lie over and over, the lie will eventually be accepted as truth. Moreover, it will be believed to be truth. Each of us is what we are because of the dominating thoughts we permit to occupy our minds. Thoughts which are deliberately placed in our own mind and encouraged with sympathy, and with which are mixed with any one or more of the emotions constitute the motivating forces. These forces direct and control our environment, every movement, act, and deed. Thoughts which are mixed with any other feelings or emotions constitute a magnetic force which attracts from the vibration of the ether other similar or related thoughts. A thought thus magnetized with emotion may be compared to a seed that, when planted in fertile soil, germinates, grows, and multiplies itself over and over and over again, until the one small seed becomes the countless millions of seeds of the same brand. The ether is a great cosmic mask of eternal forces of vibration. It is made up of both destructive vibrations and constructive vibrations. It carries at all times vibrations of fear, poverty, disease, failure, misery, and vibrations of prosperity, health, happiness, and success. It does this just as surely as it carries the sounds of hundreds of orchestrations of music and hundreds of human voices, all of which maintain their individuality and means of identification through the medium of radio. From the great storehouse of the ether, the human mind is constantly attracting vibrations that harmonize with that which dominates the mind. Any thought, idea, plan, or purpose which one holds in one's mind attracts, from the vibrations of the ether, a host of its relatives. It adds these relatives to its own force and grows until it becomes the dominating, motivating master of the individual in whose mind it has been housed. Now, let us go back to the starting point and find out how the original seed of an idea, plan, or purpose may be planted in the mind. The information is easily conveyed. Any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. This is why you are asked to write out a statement of your major purpose or definite chief aim. Commit it to your memory and repeat it in audible words day after day until the vibrations of the sound have reached your subconscious mind. We are what we are because of the vibrations of thought that we pick up and register through the stimuli of our daily environment. Resolve to throw off the influences of any unfortunate environment and to build your own life to order. Taking an inventory of mental assets and liabilities, you will discover that your greatest weakness is a lack of self-confidence. This handicap can be surmounted and timidity translated into courage through the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. The application of this principle may be made through a simple arrangement of positive thought impulses, stated in writing, memorized and repeated until they become a part of the working equipment of the subconscious faculty of your mind. Now, self-confidence formula. Step 1. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action towards this attainment, and I hear and now promise to take such action. 2. I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. Step 3. I know through principle of autosuggestion that any desire I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. Step 4. I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life. I will never stop trying until I have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. Step 5. I realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction that does not benefit all whom it affects. I succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all of humanity, because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. I will sign my name to this formula, committed to memory, and repeat it aloud once a day, with full faith that I will gradually influence my thoughts and actions so that I become a self-aligned and successful person. What's up, Skip, man? Underpinning this formula is a law of nature that no one has yet been able to explain. It is baffled the scientists of all ages. Psychologists have named this law autosuggestion and let it go at that. The name by which one calls this law is of little importance. The important fact about it is it works for the glory and success of humankind if it is used constructively. If used destructively, on the other hand, it will destroy just as readily. In this statement may be found a significant truth. Those who go down in defeat and end their lives in poverty, misery, and distress do so because of negative application of the principle of autosuggestion. The cause may be found in the fact that all impulses of thought have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical equivalent. The subconscious mind, the chemical laboratory in which all thought impulses are combined and made ready for translation to physical reality, makes some distinction between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It works with the material we feed it through our own thought impulses. The subconscious mind will translate into reality a thought driven By fear, just as readily as it would translate into reality a thought driven by courage or faith. Excuse me. The pages of medical history are rich with illustrations of cases of suggestive suicide. A person may commit suicide through negative suggestion, just as effectively as by any other means. In Miss Western City, a bank official named Joseph Grant borrowed a large sum of money of the bank's money without the consent of the directors. He lost the money through gambling. One afternoon, the bank examiner came and began to check the accounts. Grant left the bank and took a room in a local hotel, and when they found him 3 days later, he was lying in the bed, wailing and moaning, repeating over and over these words, "My God, this will kill me. I cannot stand the disgrace." In a short time, he was dead. The doctors pronounced the case one of mental suicide. Does electricity would turn the wheels of industry and provide useful service if used constructively, or snuff out life if wrongly used? So the law of autosuggestion leads you to peace and prosperity, or down into the valley of misery, failure, and death. It all depends on your degree of understanding and application of it. If you fill your mind with fear, doubt, and disbelief in your ability to connect with it and use the forces of infinite intelligence, the law of autosuggestion will take the spirit of unbelief and use it as a pattern which your subconscious mind will translate into its physical equivalent. The statement is as true as the statement that two and two are four, like the wind that carries one ship east and another west. The law of autosuggestion will lift you up or pull you down, according to the way you set your sails to fault. The law of autosuggestion, through which any person may rise to altitudes of achievement that stagger the imagination, is well described in the following verse. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you don't think you can, then you can't. It is almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find, success begins with a person's will. It is all. This is why you're here right now, babe.
Huh?
This is why you're here right now.
Oh, I'm still saying hi.
Okay.
Get down.
It is almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find, success begins with a person's will. It is all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You have to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or late, the one who thinks he can. If one is the one who thinks he can. Observe the words which have been emphasized, and you will catch the deep meaning the poet had in mind. Somewhere in your mind, make up, perhaps in the cells of your brain, lies sleeping a seed of achievement. If aroused and put into action, this will carry you to heights such as you may never have hoped to attain. This is a master musician may cause the most beautiful strains of music to pour forth from the strings of a violin, so you may arouse the genius which lies asleep in your brain, and cause it to drive you upward to whatever goal you may wish to achieve. Abraham Lincoln was a failure at everything he tried until he was well past the age of 40. He was a Mr. Nobody from nowhere until a great experience came into his life, aroused the sleeping genius within his heart and brain, and gave the world one of his really great men. That experience was mixed with the emotions of sorrow and love. It came to him through Anne Rutledge, the only woman he ever loved. This book is rapping. It is a known fact that the emotion of love is closely akin to the state of mind known as faith. Love comes very near to translating one's thoughts, impulses into the spiritual equivalent. During his research, the author discovered, from the analysis of the work and achievements of hundreds of men of outstanding accomplishment, that there was the influence of a woman's love behind nearly every one of them. The emotion of love in the human heart and brain creates a favorable field of magnetic attraction. This causes an influx of the higher and finer vibrations that are afloat in the ether. Let us consider the power of faith as it is demonstrated by the man well known to all civilization, Mahatma Gandhi of India. In this man, the world experienced one of the most astounding examples of the possibilities of faith. Gandhi wielded more potential power than any man living in his time, and this despite the fact that he had none of the orthodox tools of power, such as money, battleships, soldiers, and materials of warfare. Gandhi had no money. He had no home. He didn't even own a suit of clothes, but he did have power. How did he come by that power? He created it out of his understanding of the principle of faith, and through his ability to transplant that faith into the minds of 200 million people. Gandhi accomplished through the influence of faith something that the strongest military power on earth could not, and never will, achieve through soldiers and military equipment. He accomplished the astounding feat of influencing 200 million minds to coalesce and move in unison as a single mind, while other force on earth except faith can do as much. In the mid-20th century, Martin Luther King, through his deep faith and a belief in human rights and dignity for all people, led men and women of all races, religions, and beliefs to join in this struggle for civil rights. His dream that people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character, has not yet fully been realized, but his work and death have led to significant improvements in civil rights and impetus to keep fighting for their achievement. The watchword of the future will be human happiness and contentment. When this state of mind has been attained, the production will take care of itself more effectively than anything ever accomplished, where people did not and could not mix faith and individual interests with their labor. Because of the need for faith and cooperation in business and industry, it will be both interesting and profitable to analyze a particular event. This provides an excellent understanding of the method by which industrialists and leaders of business accumulate great fortunes, by giving before they try to get. The event chosen for this illustration dates back to 1900, when the United States Steel Corporation was being formed. As you read the story, keep in mind these fundamental facts that you will understand how ideas have been converted into huge fortunes. First, the huge United States Steel Corporation was born in the mind of Charles M. Schwab in the form of an idea he created through his imagination. Second, he mixed faith with his idea. Third, he formulated a plan for the transformation of his idea into its physical and financial reality. Fourth, he put his plan into action with his famous speech at the University Club. And fifth, he applied and followed through on his plan with persistence and backed it with a firm decision until it had finally been fully carried out. Sixth, he prepared the way for success by a burning desire for success. If you have often wondered how great fortunes are accumulated, this story of creation of the United States Steel Corporation will be enlightening. If you have any doubts that people can think and grow rich, this story should dispel that doubt, because in it you can plainly see the application of a major portion of the 13 principles described in this book. John Lowell in the New York World Telegram, with whose courtesy it is here reprinted, dramatically told this astounding story of the power of an idea. A pretty after dinner speech for $1 billion. So babe.
I need a charger.
Here you go. A pretty after dinner speech for $1 billion. When on the evening of December 12, 1900, some of 80 of the nation's financial nobility gathered in a banquet hall of the University Club on Fifth Avenue to do honor to a young man from out of the West, not a half dozen of the guests realized they were to witness the most significant episode in American industrial history. J. Edward Simmons and Charles Stewart Smith, their hearts full of gratitude for the lavish hospitality bestowed on them by Charles M. Schwab during a recent visit to Pittsburgh, had arranged a dinner to introduce the 38-year-old steel man to the Eastern Banking Society. But they didn't expect him to stampede the convention. They warned him, in fact, that the bosoms with the New York stuffed shirts would not be responsive to oratory, and that if he didn't want to bore the Stillmans and the Harrimans and Vanderbilts, he had better limit himself to 15 or 20 minutes of polite vaporings and let it go at that. Even John Pierre Morgan, sitting on the right hand of Schwab, as became his imperial dignity, intended to grace the banquet table with his presence only briefly. And so far as the press and public were concerned, the whole affair was of so little moment that no mention of it found its way into the print the next day. So the two hosts and their distinguished guests ate their way through their usual 7 or 8 courses. There was little conversation, and what there was of it was restrained. Few of the bankers and brokers had met Schwab, whose career had flowered along the banks of the Monongahela, and none knew him well. But before the evening was over, they, and with them Money Master Morgan, were swept off their feet, and a $1 billion baby, the United States Steel Corporation, was to be conceived. It is perhaps unfortunate for the sake of history that no record of Charlie Schwab's speech at the dinner table was ever made. He repeated some parts of it at a later date during a similar meeting of Chicago bankers, and still later, when the government brought suit to dissolve the Steel Trust. He gave his own version from the witness stand of the remarks that stimulated Morgan into a frenzy of financial activity. It is probable, however, that it is a homely speech, somewhat ungrammatical for the niceties of language never bothered Schwab, full of epigrams and threaded with wit. But aside from that, it was a galvanic force and effect upon the $5 billion of estimated capital that was represented by the diners after it was over and gathering was still under his spell. Although Schwab had talked for 90 minutes, Morgan led the orator to a recessed window where, dangling with their legs from the high uncomfortable seat, they talked for an hour or more. The magic of the Schwab personality had been turned on, full force, but what was more important and lasting was a full-fledged, clear-cut program he laid down for the aggrandizement of steel. Many other men had tried to interest Morgan in slapping together a steel trust after the pattern of the biscuit, wire and hoop, sugar, rubber, whiskey, oil, and chewing gum combinations. John W. Gates, the gambler, had urged it, but Morgan distrusted him. The Moore boys, Bill and Jim, Chicago stock jobbers, who had glued together a match trust and a cracker corporation, who had urged it and failed. Elbert H. Gary, the sanctimonious country lawyer, wanted to foster it, but he wasn't big enough to be impressive. Until Schwab's eloquence took J.P. Morgan to the heights from which he could visualize the solid results of the most daring financial undertaking ever conceived. The project was regarded as a delirious dream of easy money crackpots. The financial magnetism that began a generation ago to attract thousands of small and sometimes inefficiently managed companies into large and competition-crushing combinations had become operative in the steel world through the devices of the jovial business pirate John W. Gates. Gates already had formed the American Steel and Wire Company out of a chain of small concerns, and together with Morgan had created the Federal Steel Company. The National Tube and American Bridge Companies were two or more Morgan concerns, and the Moore brothers had forsaken the match and cookie business to form the American Group, Tin Plate Steel Hoop, Sheet Steel, and the National Steel Company. But by the side of Andrew Carnegie's gigantic vertical trust, a trust owned and operated by 53 partners, those in combinations were picayune. They might combine to their heart's content, but the whole lot of them couldn't make a dent in the Carnegie organization, and Morgan knew it. The eccentric old Scot knew it too. From the magnificent heights of the Skibble Castle, he had viewed, at first with amusement, and then with resentment, the attempts of Morgan's smaller companies to cut into his business. When the attempts became too bold, Carnegie's temper was translated into anger and retaliation. He decided to duplicate every mill owned by his rivals. Hitherto, he hasn't been interested in wire, pipe, hoops, or sheet. Instead, he was content to sell such companies the raw steel and let them work it into whatever shape they wanted. Now with Schwab as his chief and able lieutenant, he planned to drive his enemies to the wall. So it was that in the speech of Charles M. Schwab, Morgan saw the answer to his problem of combination. A trust without Carnegie, John them all, would be no trust at all. A plum pudding, as one writer said, without the plums. Schwab's speech on the night of December 12, 1900, undoubtedly carried the inference, though not the pledge, that the vast Carnegie enterprise could be brought under the Morgan tent. He talked of the world future for steel, of reorganization for efficiency, of specialization, of the scrapping of unsuccessful mills, and concentration of effort on the flourishing properties, of the economies in the ore traffic, of economies in overhead and administrative departments, of capturing foreign markets. More than that, he told the buccaneers among them wherein lay the errors of the customary piracy. Their purposes, he inferred, had been to create monopolies, raise prices, and pay themselves fat dividends out of privilege. Schwab condemned the system in the heartiest manner. The short-sightedness of such policy he told his hearers, laying the fact that it restricted the market in an era when everything cried for expansion. By cheapening the cost of steel, he argued, an ever-expanding market would be created. More uses for steel would be devised, and a goodly portion of the world trade could be captured. Actually, though he did not know it, Schwab was an apostle of the modern mass production. So the dinner at the University Club came to an end. Morgan went home to think about Schwab's rosy predictions, and Schwab went back to Pittsburgh to run the steel business for Andrew Carnegie, while Gary and the rest went back to their stock tickers to fiddle around in anticipation of the next move. It was not long coming. It took Morgan about 1 week to digest the feast of reasons Schwab had placed before him. When he had assured himself that no financial indigestion was the result, he sent for Schwab and found the young man rather coy. Mr. Carnegie, Schwab indicated, might not like it if he found his trusted company resident had been flirting with the emperor of Wall Street, the street upon which Carnegie had resolved never to tread. Then it was a suggestion by John W. Gates, the go-between, that if Schwab happened to be in the Bellevue Hotel in Philadelphia, J.P. Morgan might also happen to be there too. When Schwab arrived, however, Morgan was inconveniently ill at his home in New York, and so, on the elder man's pressing invitation, Schwab went to New York and presented himself at the door of the financier's library. Now, certain economic historians have professed the belief that from the beginning to the end of the drama, the stage was set by Andrew Carnegie, that the dinner, the famous speech, the Sunday night conference between Schwab and the money king were events arranged by the canny Scot. The truth is exactly opposite. When Schwab was called And to consummate the deal, he didn't even know whether the little boss, as Andrew was called, would so much as listen to an offer to sell, particularly to a group of men whom Andrew regarded as being endowed with something less than holiness. But Schwab did take into the conference with him, in his own handwriting, 6 sheets of copperplate figures, representing to his mind the physical worth and potential earnings capacity of every steel company he regarded as an essential star in the new metal firmament. 4 men pondered over these figures all night. The chief, of course, was Morgan, steadfast in his belief in the divine right of money. With him was the aristocratic partner, Robert Bacon, a scholar and a gentleman. The third was John W. Gates, whom Morgan scorned as a gambler and used as a tool. The fourth was Schwab, who knew more about the processes of making and selling steel than any whole group of men then living. Throughout the conference, the Pittsburghers' figures were never questioned. If he said a company was worth so much, then it was worth that much and no more. He was insistent, too, upon including in the combination only these concerns he nominated. He had conceived a corporation in which there would be no duplication, not even to satisfy the greed of friends who wanted to unload the companies upon the broad Morgan shoulders. Thus he left out, by design, a number of the larger concerns upon which the walruses and carpenters of Wall Street had cast hungry eyes. When dawn came, Morgan rose and straightened his back. Only one question remained. Do you think you can persuade Andrew Carnegie to sell? He asked. I can try, said Schwab. If you get him to sell, I will undertake the matter, said Morgan. So far, so good. But will Carnegie sell? How much would he demand? Schwab thought $320 million. But what he would take in payment? Common and preferred stocks, bonds, cash. Nobody could raise $1/3 billion in cash. There was a golf game in January on the frost-cracking heath of St. Andrews, Links in Westchester, with Andrews bundled up in sweaters against the cold, and Charlie talking volubly, as usual, to keep his spirits up. But no word of business was mentioned until the pair sat down in the cozy warmth of the Carnegie cottage hard by. Then, with the same persuasiveness that he had hypnotized 80 millionaires at the University Club, Schwab poured out the glittering promises of retirement and comfort, of untold millions to satisfy the old man's social caprices. Carnegie calculated, wrote a figure on a slip of paper, handed it to Schwab, and said, "All right, that's what we'll sell for." The figure was approximately $400 million and was reached by taking the $320 million mentioned by Schwab as a basic figure and adding $80 million to represent the increased capital value over the previous 2 years. Later on the deck of the transatlantic liner, the Scotsman said ruefully to Morgan, "I wish I asked you for $100 million or more." "If you asked for it, you'd have gotten it," Morgan told him cheerfully. The 38-year-old Schwab had his reward. He was made president of the new corporation and remained in control until 1930. This dramatic change in the story of big business was included in this book because it is a perfect illustration of the method by which desire can be transmuted into its physical equivalent. I imagine some readers will question the statement that a mere intangible desire can be converted into its physical equivalent. Doubtless some will say, you could not convert nothing into something. The answer is in the story of the United States Steel. The giant organization was created in the mind of one man. The plan by which the organization was provided with the steel mills that gave it financial stability was created in the mind of the same man. His faith, his desire, his imagination, his persistence were the real ingredients that went with the United States Steel. The steel mills and mechanical equipment acquired by the corporation after it had been bought into legal existence were incidental, but careful analysis will disclose the fact that the appraised value of the properties acquired by the corporation increased in value by an estimated $600 million by the mere transaction that consolidated them under one management. In other words, Charles M. Schwab's idea, plus the faith which he conveyed it to the minds of J.P. Morgan and the others, was marketed for a profit of approximately $600 million. Not an insignificant sum for a single idea. What happened to some of the people who took their share of the $1 million of profit made by the transaction is a matter which we are not concerned. The important feature of the astounding achievement is that it serves as an unquestionable evidence of the soundness of the philosophy described in this book. Moreover, the practicality of the philosophy had been established by the fact that the United States Steel Corporation prospered. It became one of the richest and most powerful corporations in America, employing thousands of people, developing new uses for steel, and opening new markets, thus proving that $600 million in profit which Schwab idea produced was earned. Riches begin in the form of thought. The amount is limited only by the person in whose mind the thought is put into motion. Faith removes limitation. Remember this when you are ready to bargain with life for whatever it is you ask as your price for having passed this way. Remember also that the man who created the United States Steel Corporation was practically unknown at the time. He was merely Andrew Carnegie's man Friday, until he gave birth to his famous idea. And after that, he quickly rose to a position of power, fame, and riches. Now for another example of how faith is an idea made millions for one man, and through it helped countless others increase their wealth. Sir John Templeton is a man with great faith in his talent to make sound and profitable investments. Templeton was better than most at investing money because people often made investments based on emotion and ignorance and not common sense. He felt that by using his skill in investing, he could not only provide a needed service to small investors, but make a good deal of money for himself as well. To accomplish this, he started a group of mutual funds to manage other people's money. This was a pioneering project as mutual funds were a relatively new concept at the time. Templeton honed that concept into what it is today. He reminisced that at the Templeton Growth Fund's first annual meeting, the participants consisted of John Templeton, one part-time employee, and one shareholder. We held the meeting in the dining room of a retired General Foods executive to save money. The Templeton Funds now have more than 6,000 employees worldwide and $36 billion in assets. Driving the growth is the Templeton Group's well-earned reputation as the premier fund group for investing. A $10,000 investment in the Templeton Fund Group is 40 years ago is now worth $3 million today. By the time he retired, this was Templeton Group fund interest in 1992 estimated at $400 million. John Templeton estimated that he had helped 1 million people make money in addition to his own success. And last page. There are no limitations to the mind except those we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought. And chat, that is the end of chapter 3 of Think and Grow Rich. I did say that as a long chapter before we started reading. And it is 36 pages. A lot to read out loud, not gonna lie. But let's go over one piece here before we wrap up today. And I want to give a word of advice because I've tried this before. And I wouldn't speak on something I've never tried before. I'm very interested in trying things, right? But this chapter talks about affirmation and auto-suggestion, right? As a recommendation for anybody who tries that, right? I recommend that you have a heart that's open to receive an affirmation, so peace, right? And to also think of how you can help other people with this goal. And that's how I'm gonna end today's read. That's all I'm gonna say. There we go. But Buds, it's time for me to go. This was way faster yesterday. But let's hit the outro. We all got the limited score, baby. I appreciate you, Mighty Vlog. I'm for sure glad you woke up today. That was super fast. I appreciate you, Mighty Vlog. I'm for sure glad you woke up today. You have a great one. I'm gonna see you next time. Peace.